Do you run every day?
You know why?
I run behind her.
Fine.
She takes so when we start together.
I've just been looking at that.
I got my fast. See what she's running, I want to email.
Okay, folks, I want to welcome you to the work session that we are going to conduct tonight on SB 190. Couple of reminders, this is a work session, so there will not be an opportunity for public comment. Basically, what we're going to be doing is the council here has questions that we feel will be helpful to be answered, hopefully by our attorneys and the folks that work for St. Charles County, and to bring some clarity, at least to the members up here, on Senate Bill 190 and what it does and what it doesn't do, and that's our purpose for this evening. So we will start by having Roy O'Sullivan give us a brief overview of exactly what we're talking about here.
Good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Rory O'Sullivan. I'm the acting county councillor. I guess, unfortunately, thank you for that nice introduction. I'm not coming here today with an awful lot of answers, unfortunately. What I'm going to do today, hopefully, is be able to, if I can figure out this clicker, there we go. It should be coming up at some point. There we go. Hopefully what I'm going to be able to do for you guys today and for the people that are in attendance is explain a little bit about what the history of this SB 190 was. What exactly does SB 190 say? So underneath that subcategory, I guess, is who is eligible for relief under SB 190, as well as how can SB 190 be adopted. And then really the focus of the presentation in the main is going to deal with issues with SB 190's language, and a brief discussion about the difference between legislative intent and the plain meaning of the language of the statute. And then the very end is going to have one slide that's going to talk about what's next. It'll be the shortest part of the presentation. So a little bit about the legislative history of SB 190. It was sponsored by Senator Luetkemeyer of District 34. The provisions relating to the property tax are substantially similar to provisions that were in previous Senate bills. So Senate Bill 715, which had been sponsored by Senator Roberts of the city of St. Louis, and then also Senate Bill 649 as sponsored by Senator Eigel from St. Charles County. Although it is important to stress that those earlier pieces of legislation did actually have some important differences. They were a little bit more specific on who these provisions were meant to apply to. And I would also say that at least one of those earlier bills, Senate Bill 715, did actually have some sort of an income threshold. So they tried to, at least arguably have it apply to the people that needed it the most. Quote, end quote. So, what exactly does SB 190 say? So the current language in the statute as signed by the governor says that any county authorized to impose a property tax may grant a property tax credit to eligible taxpayers residing in such county in an amount equal to the taxpayer's eligible credit amount. So what is an eligible credit amount? According to the statute, it is the difference between an eligible taxpayer's real property tax liability on such taxpayer's homestead for a given tax year minus the real property tax liability on such homestead in the year that the taxpayer became an eligible taxpayer. So what is or who is an eligible taxpayer? According to the statute, it is a Missouri resident who is A, eligible for Social Security retirement benefits, B, an owner of record of a homestead or has a legal or equitable interest in such property as evidenced by a written instrument, and C, is liable for the payment of real property taxes on the homestead. How does SB 190 go into effect? There's two avenues that are set forth by the legislature. One, the county can adopt an ordinance that authorizes the credit, or two, there can be a petition that's brought by 5% of the electorate who would then deliver said petition to you as the governing body, who would then put that into effect if it is successful at a vote at a later date. So again, option A is going to be by ordinance, option B by popular vote. If option B, the statute sets forth the ballot language, there's no option to change that language. The statute is clear that that's the language that is presented to the members of the community that are eligible to vote. Shall the county of, in our case, St. Charles, exempt senior citizens from increases in the property tax liability due on such senior citizens' primary residence? And it's a simple up or down, yes or no vote. Again, the main part of this presentation is going to deal with some of the issues that have been identified not just by myself but by many attorneys that are charged with looking at language of this sort. Senate Bill 190 has several issues that jump out at attorneys. One of those primary issues that jumps out to me is the Hancock or potential Hancock violation. So Article 10 of the Missouri Constitution, Section 21, essentially prohibits the state legislature from creating unfunded mandates for the county. And so that's important because what they're talking about with this property tax freeze is theoretically, that extra value, I guess, that would be placed on homes that would be captured in a tax increase will no longer go to the county. It's not just the loss of revenue that's contemplated with this Hancock issue, though. It's also the fact that there is a cost associated with even putting this into place. So I won't speak directly for Michelle, the collector, but the collector is going to be the department that has the biggest burden, I think, when it comes to implementing this. So it's going to require the development of an application process. It's going to require additional staff to be able to put this application process into place as well as administer it. And then it's also going to require some software programming. And those costs associated with the staff are not going to be costs that diminish over time. As you can see, people's wages are increasing. It's the typical thing that is going to be an increase that gets bigger over the years, not something that gets smaller. On top of that, there's also the possible cost of an election if it is option B that's chosen. And obviously, there's expensive elections and less expensive elections, but each election does have a cost, which is something that everybody should at least be aware of. So if there was to be a special election that was called, that would obviously be quite an expensive proposition to put on the ballot and actually have that administered, and that cost does have to be paid for. The other issue that exists with the Constitution would be the homestead exemption violation, or at least a potential one, in Section 6A of Article 10. And basically what 6A says is that if the state legislature is going to create an exemption from tax, then within that legislation, they're supposed to create some sort of replacement of the funds that are going to be lost, and that was not done in this Senate Bill 190. I would argue that, in fact, the legislature went one step further and have now declared that the county and taxing entities must consider those tax credits as if it was revenue that they had earned, which is going to be problematic down the road, at least in my view. There is a risk with option A that I want to bring to people's attention, which is that were this to actually be a Hancock violation or a homestead exemption violation, there is a risk of waiving those challenges to those exemptions, to the fact that the legislature hasn't created this revenue replacement, hasn't funded the mandate, and so we would risk waiving that were the council to pass an ordinance rather than having it go to the people for a vote. It's at least a risk.
Corey,
Yes, sir.
explain what you mean by waiving the.
Sure. So there's a theoretical world in which case, the county believes that, or a county believes that what the state legislature has done is unconstitutional. They take a challenge. They would file a declaratory judgment action in court to try and get a judge to say whether it was constitutional or not. And then theoretically, the argument would be, well, if the council has gone ahead and approved it by an ordinance, then they have said basically that they're willing to go with the risk, they're willing to waive that challenge because they've basically taken it upon themselves to do what the legislature has authorized them to do. The legislature doesn't compel counties to do this, it just allows counties to do it through those two different methods. So again, it's a risk if the council is the one that takes the action. If the people put it to that popular vote, there's at least more of a credible argument that the county hasn't voluntarily waived our Hancock Amendment violation. Yes, sir.
Rory, how you said it's an unfunded mandate, the Hancock Amendment, so how is it an unfunded mandate if it's taxes they haven't collected yet? Because they're freezing the taxes. They already collected the taxes, it's just future taxes, so how does that become unfunded?
Yeah, so, and I apologize if I wasn't clear. Basically, in order to implement this tax credit or this tax exemption, the county has to expend funds in order to do that. So we have to create an application process and we have to staff that application process's administration. So it's going to take individuals, and they have to do it every single year because the way the statute is written, it's an annual calculation. And so there's going to have to be paperwork that is required, that is reviewed for accuracy and completeness, and we're going to have to staff people to do all of that. So that fund, the monies that are expended on that are not being covered anywhere else. That's something that the state legislature would have caused us to expend without giving us the funds for, which would be, at least in my reckoning, a Hancock violation.
So you also said the cost of an election.
Yeah.
You said that there's additional cost of election, this particular election. When did we ever bring up the cost of election when it was a tax increase? I don't remember that conversation. So here you're talking about this because it's a tax decrease or a freeze, and you're talking about talking points that I've never heard before when we're doing tax increases or any kind of a thing.
Well, I'll just say that all I was asked to do today was to present on some of the potential issues.
These talking points are all just in favor of not putting this on the ballot is what this is. These are all talking points that the MAC put on.
Mr. Chairman.
I would
Yes.
just argue,
Just a
I would
second,
just
sir.
argue
Mr.
that.
Chairman.
Hold on, Steve. No, this is a council meeting. These things are to be debated. They're not. It's not just a one-horse show. So I'm Taylor. I have some questions.
Right now, what we're doing is we're trying to get information. You'll have plenty of time to question.
Yeah.
Once
Well,
he-
I'm questioning his points right now
Okay.
while he's on that topic.
Well,
Okay?
I think we can go ahead and allow him to finish.
Yeah,
and
that's fine,
bring those
yeah.
points up.
Mr. Chairman, Rory is pointing out the issues that would come before a judge. Which side of that issue?
These issues are to be questioned by this council up here, Steve, when he's talking about it. That's what I'm doing, because I don't agree with him. I got the Missouri Tax
He's not
Relief
taking a
Board.
position on anything.
Some-
He's identifying the issues. We could be on one side of that issue arguing one way, or depending upon what you eventually do, we could be on another side arguing the opposite
Right.
extreme.
And he should-
These are the issues
It is our
that people
job.
need to understand
While he's
before
talking
they
about it-
start debating what in
Steve,
fact
while
to
he's
do.
talking about it, it is our job to ask questions.
Right.
That's what I'm doing.
Okay, let's allow Mr. O'Sullivan to go ahead and continue, and then.
Thank you.
We'll have an opportunity to not only question, but also ask others, okay?
Sounds good, thank you. All right, other potential issues with the language. There is some internal inconsistency within the statute in how it is drafted. They interchangeably use the terms exemption or tax credit. Depending on, each of those words, I would argue, have a special legal meaning. They are not the same thing. As you can see, the homestead exemption provisions are, they require the state to provide a funding mechanism that will replace that. Whereas if it's a tax credit, then it's not going to be treated quite the same. So that's another potential issue with the way that the statute is written. There is a possibility that, again, moving back to, why did they put in the statute that the county or counties have to treat these tax credits as revenue? And there's an argument that it's going to prevent the county from being able to roll its tax levies back up to account for that lost revenue. There are issues with timing that I think that the council needs to be aware of. It does say in the statute that it is in the year that the taxpayer became an eligible taxpayer, and so there are multiple options for how you would read that language, which again is not advocating for a particular reading one way or the other, but these are all different ways that it could be read, that the statute only goes into effect on August 28th, 23, and so does that mean that it is at that point that you can become an eligible taxpayer, at which point the taxes are freezed? Or is it at the age that an individual starts drawing down their Social Security retirement benefits? So if somebody turned 62 10 years ago, is the county expected to calculate it back to that 10-year date, or do they calculate it moving forward from that August 2023 date? Again, not advocating either way, just pointing out an issue that is not resolved by the way that the statute is written. There is no direction in the statute as to when the election must take place. That's another thing that I think it's important for not just council to understand, but also the general public, is that once the petition is presented to the council, there is nothing in the statute that would compel the council to put it on the next immediate, municipal election, or call a special election or anything like that. And so again, it's just another thing to factor into, that conversation or that process when it comes to trying to price out some of these different issues. Again, there's a cost to putting something on the ballot, and then there's also an issue about turnout. I think everybody here on the dais is familiar with, low turnout elections or high turnout elections. So just another thing to be thinking of. Narrow versus broad interpretations. These are the most important issues, I would argue. The statute says eligible for Social Security retirement benefits, and so that can potentially raise a question about certain teachers or railroad employees, whether they would be excluded because they are not eligible to draw down depending on what retirement system they're a part of. They might not actually be eligible to draw down Social Security benefits. So does that mean that they are not considered eligible under this statute? There's an argument that if you take the narrowest approach, they're not eligible. Does it require somebody to be already receiving the benefit, or is it just qualified or eligible to be able to receive it at some point? Have you worked enough quarters to be able to draw down Social Security at some point? Again, depending on whether you read that narrowly or broadly, and anytime that you've got a statute where you can have wild swings in a narrow or broad interpretation, that's going to be problematic. Is it 65 years of age, or is it 62 years of age? People can draw down at 62 years of age sometimes. So the other issue, of course, is whether a person, who's an owner in terms of this statute. So they have to have a legal or equitable interest in the property. So what about property that's held in a trust? It's not specifically spelled out in the statute how that would be administered. What about somebody that has a second residence, like a holiday home, let's say, down in the Lake of the Ozarks? If their wife decides to put their name on that, can she treat that as her personal residence? And now they've frozen the property taxes on that, as well as the regular residence that they're occupying in St. Charles County. How does that get tracked between counties? There's nothing currently in the system that would allow that to be tracked, so that there wouldn't be any potential, abuse is a strong word. But from increases in the property tax liability would be the third part of this. So again, a narrow interpretation. Does that mean that we're just taking St. Charles County's property tax, which, as you know, is a very small amount, is a very minor part of an individual's property tax bill, is what actually goes to St. Charles County for road and bridge emergency dispatch? Or is it every special taxing district's taxes? So is this statute authorizing, were we to put it to a vote or put it through council via an ordinance, is it authorizing us to say, St. Charles City, we're going to stop your property taxes, the school districts, are we stopping your property taxes? Again, arguably, on the broadest reading of this, theoretically, yes. And so that's going to be, we get into this issue then about what is the actual purpose of this statute? What did the legislature mean? Yes, sir.
Can you go back to the
Yes, sir.
blind pension fund?
Yep.
What, I don't think you spoke to that.
I
If you
didn't
did, I
speak to
missed
that,
it.
and thank you for pointing that out. So the state has come out and said that the blind pension fund is absolutely not covered by this. I don't really understand where they've found the rationale for that, except that they have come out, the Department of Revenue has made this declaration that the county would still be on the hook for this blind pension fund. So that means, and going back to what's an unfunded mandate, the county has to provide that lost tax revenue arguably to the state, even if we're not collecting it. So, yes, sir.
Roy, we're kind of splitting hairs here, because, I mean, eligible for Social Security retirement benefits, that's 62 years old, everybody knows that. As far as trust property, that shouldn't be included. And as far as secondary residence in another county, unless that county passes something, it really doesn't matter to us if they don't pass some tax credit. So I think we're kind of splitting hairs on this.
You know what? I agree. As an attorney, part of my job is splitting hairs, so that's absolutely true. But I'll also add that either way you take it, whether you take the most narrow reading of this statute or the broadest reading of this statute, it's going to likely end up in court. And a judge is going to be the one that has to make the decision about whether we're being too narrow or too broad. If we read it so narrowly that we're only taking county taxes and we have, we figure out in our best, attempt to understand what the legislature was doing exactly who this applies to, then you're going to have the people that think that we're not giving enough of a tax credit to the people that would be eligible, and they'll be the ones taking us to court. If we read it so broadly that we start taking taxes from a school district, then the school district is going to be taking us to court saying, you don't get to read it that way. You don't get to put it into effect that way. So I take your point, I absolutely do. I guess here, just providing information to you all so that you can understand the situation, I guess, that the legislature has created.
Okay, Mr. Swanson.
Mr. Holler,
And then we'll get you, Joe.
you cut off Mr. Brazel when he was asking questions to Rory about everything. Let's let him finish his presentation.
Okay.
Because that's what you asked Mr. Brazel to do.
That's fine. All right.
Thank you.
Legislative intent versus plain meaning. So, what's a court going to do if it does wind its way into a courtroom? Legislative intent is what the legislatures say they meant to do when they put something into effect. The statute and its plain reading is what has actually happened. And when you've got a conflict between the two, unless there is some sort of, complete illogical result or it's completely ambiguous, then the courts don't look outside of the four corners of the particular statute. So it is, again, we've got an issue here where, the people that were in favor of passing this have made certain statements. It's not necessarily as ironclad in the way that the statute ended up being passed and ended up being signed by the governor.
What does this do as it goes to Governor Parsons' desk?
So the principal thing it does is it freezes the property taxes on the primary residence of any senior in Missouri who's 65-year-old. And so we have seen, certainly around the state, but in particular here in the metro area, dramatic increases in the real estate property taxes of individuals in and around Jackson County. And for many seniors, there are fixed incomes. And so when the government comes in and says, we're going to jack up property tax bill by 50, 60, 70%, as been the case in some of these reassessments, you're literally talking about seniors being taxed out of their homes in no way, and no possibility for them to stay in their homes. So this bill would cap the amount of senior pays on the property taxes as of their 65th birthday.
So just to go back to Councilmember Hammond's point a minute ago about how anybody that reads this can understand that it applies to the people that are 62 and above that are drawn down Social Security, the sponsor of the bill himself disagrees with you and says that it's 65 or older. And I'm only saying that to illustrate the point that, again, the legislative intent may not have been what was actually ended up on the page, which is why there is a problem. House Speaker Dean Plocker came out and said that our seniors need that safety to know that when they're paying into that system, they should be able to get it on the back end and enjoy a secure retirement. The point of that quote is to indicate to you all that, again, the legislature doesn't think that it's the narrow reading. The legislature, those that were in favor of passing this, think that it is the broadest possible reading, which not everybody is going to agree with, which is going to bring the courts into this. The Missouri NEA says that the language could be interpreted to eliminate future increases in school property tax liability for those taxpayers in those counties where the credit is authorized. Again, other people are identifying these issues. It's certainly not just me or lawyers for the Missouri Association of Counties or any other lawyer that works for a county around the state. So what's next? And again, this is the shortest slide because of all the issues and all the questions that I just brought to you, and unfortunately, again, I don't have an awful lot of answers. The Missouri Association of Counties is in the process, if it has not already, finished forming its task force that is going to be made up of various statewide officials. It's my understanding that that the task force is supposed to be preparing some sort of a report with a view to getting it in front of the legislatures, presumably at the end of the year, beginning of the year, so that they would be able to put some possible legislative fixes in to resolve some of these ambiguous issues. And then again, unfortunately, the third bullet on that page is litigation, because that probably is the most likely avenue that we get some answers on this particular issue. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Could I follow up on that last slide, just to bring you up to speed on some things that we have done already? You're getting right now a copy of a letter which I sent to the governor today, about a month or, well, probably 6 weeks ago. I sent the governor a letter before this bill was signed. I told him that both myself and I thought everyone in the council wanted to see some sort of tax relief and a good bill, but pointed out all the problems that, or at least some of the problems Rory's gone over today, and suggested, unlike the schools and the counties who wanted to just veto the bill, I suggested he veto the bill and call a special session at the veto session in September. And it might take one extra day, but it takes 5 days to pass a bill. They could clean all this up so that we don't waste our time passing one bill and then find out 6 months from now the courts are going to strike it down. He did not do that. This letter here, basically, the bill's signed. It's going to go into law on the 28th of August. Again, I think he could go ahead and call a special session. The legislature could clarify, because what we're finding out when we talk to our legislators is they think this bill allows us to cut taxes for all the political subdivisions, and they think it applies to people like Mr. Hammond suggested, people that are 62 and you don't have to actually be eligible for Social Security. So in other words, they're giving it a very broad interpretation. We've scheduled a meeting on August 24th. We've invited the delegation. We're going to kind of just talk to them, and I talked to a couple of them this morning. You know, what did you intend? What did you intend? And basically what some are telling us is what they intended was fine, and actually something I think all of us would agree with, but did they write it well enough that a judge is going to agree that that's what we can do? Now, having said that, what I asked Rory to do after we met this morning is to start working on a bill that would give this issue the broadest possible interpretation that would provide the most relief possible under the language that's in the bill. But also write the bill in such a way that should we go through with that and you pass it and I sign it, if it becomes law and then it goes to court, and a portion of it is thrown out, the court says, no, that you can't take everybody's taxes, only your own. Or the court says, no, you can't make these people eligible. Then, according to the ordinance, we would revert back to that more conservative interpretation. What I don't want to do is pass a bill that gets thrown out entirely, and then we have to come back and start over, and the people who need the relief are waiting years before they can actually get it. We can't do anything till August the 28th, which is the day that the bill goes into effect. That happens to be our next meeting date. I'm going to hope that Rory can get me something to send to you by the end of this week or at the latest early next week. Maybe we can all agree and sign on to the same bill. But again, when we do that, everybody needs to understand that it's not for sure, it's not for certain that the courts will uphold what we're doing. So we need to make sure we have a fallback position in that bill so that at least whatever the courts say we can do, we in fact are able to do. And if we can do more, that would be tremendous. And you and I, you probably agree with me, it's so frustrating for the last 16 years for me to hear all the complaints about property taxes, which are legitimate complaints. But most people do not understand that only about 2% of that property tax that they pay actually goes to county government. So were we to do the minimum here and just go ahead and allow the relief on our own taxes, people out here in the audience are going to get their tax bill a year from now and look at it and say, is that all there is? Okay? To give the kind of relief that the legislature wants to give, we need to interpret it very broadly, and I guess I'm also very frustrated. If they wanted us to do that, they could have taken a little more time. They could have written it in such a way that the judges would have to agree with us, and then we wouldn't be in this precarious situation. It's just it's a topic that everybody, I think everybody I know anyway, is in favor of us doing something. The legislature, they just left town. They said, well, we did something. Well, they sure did, but I wish they'd have done a little bit better. If we do the wrong thing and we get overturned by a judge, we'll be criticized as well. That's why I want to make sure that if we are overturned, because we're too broad in how we interpret this, at least they'll get what the courts say we can do, which is only the 2%, but at least it's better than nothing. So again, I think Rory did a good job explaining. You may still have questions about the different interpretations and how it could or shouldn't be interpreted. But I think at least now everybody's in a better position to have an intelligent discussion on this issue.
Terry?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to ask Professor Gall a couple of questions. He's with Missouri Tax Relief, if I may. Professor, you might come up.
I thought we weren't bringing up people from the outside.
No, we were.
This was only going to be an internal discussion for us. We weren't bringing up anybody from the outside.
Don't we want somebody that has counter some of these comments that are made? I mean, don't you want an equal position on both sides? Because some of the things that are being
I don't think
said-
anybody was taking a position on anything. All Rory was doing was bringing up the questions that are coming up that are undefined in the bill. He wasn't taking a position one way or the other. He was not taking a position.
He was vague for a reason. I talked to all the senators, I talked to Professor, he's got 2,500 people in his organization. It was vague, there's 114 counties in the state of Missouri. It was vague for a reason, so they could write the language to be adapted to each county. There's a bunch of things that he said that he would say, I would say, if he says this, I would say this. And then when you have a conversation, a debate, this is what you do. You're supposed to hear both sides. It's not an argument, it's just conversation.
Yeah, if you
So
need a
you-
motion to allow this gentleman to speak, I'd like to make that motion.
Yeah, I mean, I know that.
I'd really like to hear what he has
One
to
side, is that what?
Mr. Swanson, go ahead.
If we're going to do that, then I know Mr. Lewis right here, we've known each other a long time, he'd love to speak too. Do we open this up to everyone? As I read what we have here for the meeting tonight.
You don't have one side, you have both sides on everything.
No, wait a minute.
Both-
You don't know where
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Lewis stands. And what I'm saying is that I've known him a long time. If you're going to bring up one person, well, then I want to bring up people who want to advocate. And I'll guarantee you, Mr. Lewis is probably on the exact same side that you and I are, and that gentleman is. But that's not what the purpose of this meeting was. It was for us to be informed by the attorney, and then to have a back and forth as us elected officials. It was not open for people to come up and speak. Now, if we want to change that, that's fine. But we're going to need more than an hour.
No, I believe.
Well, we do need more than an hour.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I've got 5 minutes.
Sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Sir, yes.
Can I inquire, Mr. Brazel? May I inquire, Mr.
Yes,
Bradley?
yes, sir.
Do you think Rory took a side in that presentation?
Some of the things that the comments he made, that we've never made those
He
comments before.
gave
It's a
both
tax
sides.
increase.
You really think he took a side?
Steve, I watched the MAC conference in July, the July MAX conference on YouTube.
So did I.
It was all talking points. What they're trying to do is say, here are the talking points. We want the 275 county commissioners of the state of Missouri to think and say. There's a lot of, I talked to Bill Eigel, I talked to Nick Schroer, I talked to Bob Honor. They wrote this vague. There's everything that he said, I could say this. I could say, well, it was written vague for a reason because they want it to be custom made to each county. I could say that. I could say, he wants to say,
but
we
you
may
know
be
enough
challenged.
about
Hold on, Steve,
statutory
this is the councilman.
interpretation.
He said that it may be risk involved. There may be, this is muddy water. That's what we have attorneys for. They got to deal with that in court. Then bring it to a judge. That's what you do. But then all these excuses is what they are. Well, challenge it, because there's all these counties that are getting pushed back from bureaucrats because they want to keep the seniors' taxes.
Well, already-
This is something that we should do, and we could massage it and make it work for this county.
Do you want to debate with me? I mean, I already suggested that we go with
But
a
you guys aren't
bill.
even letting me have my side. You want his opinion, and I have an opinion by this gentleman.
I don't want his opinion. I have my own opinion. He gave
You're
both
his
sides of the
opinion.
argument.
I'm going to make a ruling. As chair, I was the one that called the work session. I was the one that laid out the parameters of the work session. I'm going to decide that we are not going to allow this gentleman to speak. Now, certainly you are welcome to speak in our regular meeting where we have public comment. Anyone is welcome to speak during public comment and issue their opinions on this particular bill or any particular bill, actually. So this work session was originally presented so that we could get ideas. And again, Joe, I don't believe that anyone here was taking a side. I think that what they were presenting was the things that have come up over. Did Mr. Swansea get another thing?
Mr. Brazel, if you want to present that information, you are free to do so. You don't need a quote expert to come up here. If you have that information, you learned that, enlighten us.
He's the professor that's got, it's Missouri
Right,
tax
but this is for
relief.
us
And so whenever
to
we
discuss.
do-
So if
anytime
you're willing to
when
speak,
when-
speak.
When we have a bill, we always have let both sides, so when you're pros and cons, that's what a debate is called. It's not one-sided.
Okay, so you don't have anything to add to
Well,
this?
then he can come,
Okay.
well, I just talked about it. It's vague for a reason.
Miss-
All the stuff,
Mr.
there's a
Elam.
unfunded
Mr.
mandate,
Joyce.
that makes no sense.
Mr. Elam,
I
go
mean,
ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
again, I just want to make sure everybody understands. Rory gave both sides. I specifically said that I've asked him to draw a bill that is broad as possible. Okay, now, I don't know, do we want someone else to, are we going to argue now about somehow it can be broader than broad as possible? I mean, if it gets out here and somebody thinks it's broader after they've seen it, they'll have an opportunity to come up and say, no, we think it could be even broader. But again, I thought we would eliminate some of this, what should I say? Some of this debate by going with a bill that is as broad and gives as much relief as everybody in the General Assembly says it's supposed to. And then if the judges strike it down, it's on them, not on us. But I don't know what else we can do. I mean, I thought that Mr. Brazel would absolutely be delighted to hear that we're going with the broadest interpretation possible. And when he sees it, if he thinks it could be broader, we'll be glad to discuss it with him.
Mr. Elam.
So, Joe, this is not a debate. This was designed to be an information work session, not a debate. No one on the council was taking a side. We were here to learn what did the bill say, what are the issues that are vague, so we can understand that part, and then we were going to move forward. We have the professor's information that he's going to present. We all have it. But the thing I don't like about work sessions, especially like this, is no one knew that we were going to bring in anyone from the outside. We had agreed that this was going to be an informational session with us, and I had asked, are we going to have people from the outside? And I was told no. So none of the rest of us had the opportunity to go find anybody that you wanted to bring here. You were the only one who has your expert to come in. You may be amazing. I have no idea. I don't know who you are. I don't know what your qualifications are. You could be brilliant and the most amazing person to speak on this bill ever, but I don't know you. So quite frankly, I'm going to wait and read what you have. I'm going to look at the information that you have and go forward from there. And I'm not asking to bring anybody else up because it's not a debate. It's an information session. It's not here for us to argue back and forth. Once we have a bill, we will debate a bill. But right now, we were just looking at what did the bill say that the Senate passed. And that's all we're doing right now is just to do that.
How can you get information if you don't get information from other sources? So
And we have his
This is
information.
the only information available. So I was going to just suggest, now Terry, listen,
I was listening.
we've had work sessions, a lot of them. I don't ever remember us, a councilman, not being able to ask a gentleman in the audience, could you please answer some questions? I don't remember that, Mike. I don't remember a silence.
And that's why we stopped
I don't
doing it,
remember
Joe.
us choosing who can talk and who can't. I do not ever remember it, especially a gentleman who runs an organization with 2,500 members for Missouri Tax Relief. I would say he's got a little bit of stick, okay? So for you,
great.
and I didn't even see what you're talking about. Did you send it out, Terry, that we're not allowing anybody to speak? I didn't see that.
That was
Because it's
the
typical
understanding.
customary.
That
to
was
let
the
other people-
understanding.
That was the
A council member asks questions. Why wouldn't you want that?
Yeah.
If he makes a fool of himself, let him make a fool of himself.
Well, I'm not, no.
No, because
certainly
what I'm
not.
saying is you're saying the information isn't mine. You
Again.
just said it's for collecting information, not a debate. Well, then let's collect information.
I would say
That's
that
all.
we will
I don't get it.
we will have a very long period of time to collect information as much as we possibly can before this bill actually comes before us in order for us to actually vote on it. There not only will be discussion on the bill itself, discussion amongst us, obviously comments from anyone who wants to speak on it during the course of the regular meeting. Okay, but tonight was going to be a work session so that we could find out what these questions are. I don't think there's anyone on in this group right here that wasn't excited when they heard that Senate Bill 190 had passed. And see, as quite a few of us up on here are senior citizens, we're excited about the idea that taxes would be frozen. Okay, what has happened since then is we have found out that it's not going to be as simple as we would like it to be, because there's always going to be lawsuits, there's always going to be lawyers, there's always going to be litigation, there's always going to be people that question the things that Rory brought up there, which I don't understand half of them, okay? But then again, I'm not a lawyer. So that's the purpose. The purpose is for us to ask these questions, to find out what our experts in our county government, how they feel on, where we stand on this. Okay. Yes, Mr. Baker, go ahead.
First off, thank you, Rory, for the insight. So this bill that you're drafting, was that something that you think we can vote on as a body? So that's the intent, is to get us a bill that we can vote on?
Yeah, what I just said, I would try to get you a
Okay.
copy by the end of this week or the first part,
I
and then
think-
we can maybe actually have consensus. Maybe everybody can sign the same bill.
I think that's
We won't have much of a
fantastic.
debate to engage in.
Right.
But, if somebody doesn't like it, or somebody wants to do more, or somebody do less, that's obviously going to be up to you in the end to actually pass an ordinance.
That's great, thank you. I just think that, I wanted this to be an informational session. I want everybody, especially the seniors, understand why we haven't passed anything yet. Because like Mr. Hollander said, when we heard about it, we all got excited. We were like, okay, when are we gonna get this on the agenda to pass? And people that are smarter than me, like Mr. O'Sullivan, figured out that, if we do this, there's gonna be a lot of issues. There's gonna be a lot of legal issues, and there's gonna be a lot of costs if we do this now. So I think, I'm looking forward to 2 weeks and seeing what we get, so thank you.
When this thing first came up, I was totally shocked when St. Louis County brought it up immediately. They brought it up immediately, and all these questions were still out there, so they voted it down. And I did not want that to happen here. If we vote, when we vote on this, we need to be knowing what we are voting on and not what could be. Mr. Swanson.
So if we can get some substance here. Question. Would seniors have to apply each year for this?
Yes, there would have to be a calculation. There would have to be a calculation on an annual basis according to the statute, yes.
Okay, so second question. Is this a cut or is it a refund?
As I understand it, it is not a refund. It is a tax credit or an exemption depending on what part of the statute you're reading.
Okay, when you say tax credit though, that can be looked at a couple different ways.
Correct, yeah. I mean, that's part of the problem. To Councilmember Brazel's point about how the legislature thought that they were writing this vaguely on purpose, that's exactly the problem, is that you're going to have, regardless of what position you advocate, you're going to have somebody on the other side saying that we're either doing too much or not enough, and that's why it's going to go to court.
So my final question here for everybody. Here's what I have for the rest of the council. We're the third largest in the state of Missouri. We can sit back and wait for somebody to take the lead, or we can take the lead. I personally don't like sitting back. I would like to take the lead and possibly take a little bit of risk on it. And, with everything we do in life, there is risks and rewards. I would like to see something presented, and then also whatever is presented to us, I would like to have it fully public so everybody else can have eyes on it. So Mr. Brazel's expert can take a look at it and weigh in on it, give information back to Mr. Brazel, bring it back to the board so we can have a full discussion on it and see where it goes. But I don't want to sit back and wait for another county to do something. We are the third largest. That means we should take the lead on everything that happens in this state. The only other larger counties are Kansas City and St. Louis. Let's take the lead and do something right for our seniors.
I agree.
Yes.
I'd just like to add, I guess I'm going to apologize for getting upset, but I'll tell you why, and I'll be brief, me and Mr. Baker requested a meeting about this several months ago, and I got 0 responses. And then I was told that there were some council meetings, or peak council members meeting with you and whatever to talk about this. And I thought it was unfair that we weren't publicly talking about this. And so I feel that when we have dialogue on these sort of issues that are sensitive, they should be talked publicly. And we finally got here. I get it. I know we had a tough agenda, but I just think it's important to have open dialogue. And I appreciate what Matt said. He's absolutely correct. We should move forward in this and have conversation about it. But I don't like it when we try to not disclose things. And I think that's why I was frustrated over this, because nobody responded to any of my emails, which I'm okay with that, but that's why my level of frustration was a little high, okay?
Again, I was, we did have a pretty heavy agenda the last couple of meetings, and the whole thing that my thinking of it was, rather than jump right into it like St. Louis County did, that we would wait, see the different questions that other people have been brought up, including assessors and collectors and, people around the state that are actually doing this also. And then we would have a better understanding of exactly what we're dealing with. Yes, Mr. Hammond.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems is seniors just like me that are retired, have a pension. I got a small pension and Social Security. And inflation has just killed us.
Yeah, sure.
I used to go out to dinner a couple nights a week. I can't afford that anymore.
Well, again, just to speak on something that was brought up, I'm a teacher. Mr. Johnson is too. I was a teacher, a retired teacher. So the very first question that came up was, well, does this include teachers? The person that wrote the bill said, yes, it does. Well, it doesn't say that, though, all right? And of course, I'm getting Social Security only because my wife made me work during the summer all those years. That's the only reason I'm getting the Social Security. So, again, those were questions that have come up repeatedly in the last couple of weeks.
So the one thing that I wanted to point out, and Central Committee's here and had sent recommendations about, please pass this. I wanted you to understand there's a reason why we haven't jumped on this right away. And it's because we want to craft something that'll work. And that was the whole purpose of not to put anybody in who has a dog in the fight one way or the other, right? Because I talked to 3 of our state reps from St. Charles County who all voted for this bill. And I asked them about the details. What does this mean? What does this mean? All 3 of them gave me different answers, right? So if the 3 of them who all agreed on this bill, and they all said, you should pass it. And I said, great, well, what about this? And what about this? They all gave me different answers. So I think it's clear that we need to understand what we're going to vote on before we vote on it and not jump in. I think this bill is a half-baked pie. And I think the legislature baked it halfway and then gave it to you and said, good luck finishing this thing off. And I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be conscientious and make sure that we make the best decision. I talked to Collectors Association, and they question whether or not they can discount other political subdivisions' taxing rates. I don't know if they can or not. But those are all things that I think Rory was trying to bring up and talk about the fact of, hey, this is vague. So when you're crafting, be mindful that this is vague. So all the different areas where you're going to run into challenge, that's what tonight was really designed for. So when a lot of you folks are going, hey, hurry up and vote for this, that's why we're hitting the pause button on this, to make sure that we write a good bill. I don't know why you're shaking your head. We want to write a good bill that's going to pass and stand up. And it doesn't go in until, this doesn't become active until the 28th anyway. So we wouldn't be able to do anything before then to this point. So we're working ahead and we're trying to get to the point we're going to be. I just thought it was interesting that 3 state reps who all voted for it had 3 different interpretations of the bill that they voted for. And that gave me pause.
All right, I'd like to go ahead and end the work session. Obviously, we have another, our regular meeting that starts in about 8 minutes, and obviously we have folks out there in the, waiting to get in. So I'd like to take a little bit of break. We'll come back at 7 and start our regular meeting. Okay? All right. Thank you, folks. but it'll have already been voted on by the time they do it, I believe.
Hopefully. Nice job on that, by the way. It's just how he's going to be.
Conspiracy theorist.
Did you see they shut the Elm Point water plant down?
All right, folks. This thing working? Okay, I'd like to welcome you to the St. Charles County Council regular meeting of Monday, August the 14th. We will begin the meeting with an invocation being delivered by Corporal Barry Bales of the St. Charles County Police Public Information Officer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Nancy Snyder. Please rise. Thank you, sir.
Let us pray. God, we thank you this evening for the freedoms that we enjoy as a nation, as citizens. We thank you for your covering upon our lives, your protection, God, upon our families. Lord, we ask you this evening that you would bring a peace, God, and an understanding to our hearts. That, God, you would give wisdom to guide the decisions, Lord God, and the discussions, Lord God, that are presented. Lord, we thank you, God, for the hope that we have through Jesus Christ, ultimately, God, for our lives and our futures. We ask you to keep us tonight during this time. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Councilman Swanson. Councilman Swanson.
Here, ma'am.
Councilman Brazel.
Here.
Councilman Elam.
Here.
Councilman Hollander.
Here.
Councilman Hammond.
Here.
Councilwoman Schneider.
here.
Councilman Baker.
Here.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may
yes.
I make a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
That we advance the two resolutions which are on our agenda today to take up at this time.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We will begin this meeting with the two resolutions, beginning with resolution number 2303, designating St. Charles County as a Purple Heart County.
Resolution 2303, sponsored by council as a whole. A resolution designating the County of St. Charles as a Purple Heart County to remember and honor those veterans who are the recipients of the Purple Heart Medal. Whereas the Purple Heart Medal is awarded in the name of the President and is presented to service members who have been wounded or killed as a result of enemy action while serving in the U.S. military. And whereas a Purple Heart is a solemn distinction and means a service member has greatly sacrificed themselves, having been wounded or paid the ultimate price, having been killed while in the line of duty. And whereas the Purple Heart is the oldest U.S. military decoration in use, having been initially created as a badge of military merit by General George Washington in 1782. And whereas the contributions and sacrifices of the men and women from St. Charles County that served in the U.S. military have been vital in maintaining the freedoms and way of life enjoyed by our citizens. And whereas the St. Charles County Council appreciates the sacrifices our Purple Heart recipients made while defending freedom and believes specific recognition should be accorded to them in appreciation of their courage and to demonstrate the honor and support they have earned. Now therefore be it resolved by the County Council of St. Charles County, Missouri as follows. Section 1. The St. Charles County Council hereby designates the County of St. Charles as a Purple Heart County, honoring the service and sacrifice of our men and women in uniform, wounded or killed by the enemy while serving to protect the freedoms of all Americans.
Thank you. Anyone on the council have any comments on this particular resolution? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Resolution 23-03, a resolution designating the County of St. Charles as a Purple Heart County to remember and honor those veterans who are the recipients of the Purple Heart Medal. Councilman Swanson.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Brazel. Councilman Elam.
Yes.
Councilman Hollander.
Yes.
Councilman Hammond.
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider.
Yes.
Councilman Baker.
Yes.
Okay, resolution number 2303 passes. Next up, very good. Okay, next up for consideration is resolution number 2304.
Resolution number 2304, sponsored by Matt Swanson, Joe Brazel, Nancy Schneider, and Tim Baker. A resolution concerning the St. Charles City County Library System and making certain recommendations, including the adoption of a neutral political policy on all cultural issues.
Any comments on this particular issue, Mr. Brazel?
We've got a lot of static on this issue with the library situation. And as far as I'm concerned, this has nothing to do with any one individual. It has something to do with dress codes and being appropriately dressed in any kind of government institution. It also has states in here talking about being apolitical. If it was the other way around and the library was promoting a big conservative agenda, it would upset the other side as well. So what we're asking is it to be apolitical, non-political. Teach kids how to read. It's about reading books, and it's about dressing appropriate when you're at work. I could not show up at work in a Speedo or any inappropriate dress like that. So it's about dressing appropriately. Also, it talks about removing the Urban Library Council. That's a $10,000 a year fund that is a left liberal, promotes progressive left political agenda, and that needs to go away. We don't need the political library or any government institution to be forcing any kind of political agenda down our throat in any fashion.
Anyone
Also goes
else?
on to say, and Terry added some really good language that says that we're really disappointed with the library system, how they're closed on Sundays after COVID, and they're not open on Sundays. I mean, the library, that's when people want to go to the library and read. And then we have some anonymous letters from employees that they're underpaid, they're mistreated. So there's a lot of administrative issues within the library district. So we're asking that the library board take some action to make some appropriate corrections so we don't have any more problems or have any more of this woke narrative political agenda nonsense.
Anyone else? Okay, please call the roll.
Resolution 2304, a resolution concerning the St. Charles City County Library System and making certain recommendations, including the adoption of a neutral political policy on all cultural issues. Councilman Brazel?
Yes.
Councilman Elam?
Yes.
Councilman Hollander?
Yes.
Councilman Hammond?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman Baker?
Yes.
Councilman Swanson?
Yes.
Okay. Resolution 2304 passes. Now we move back to the top of our agenda here. We will have public comments. Just a reminder on public comments that you need to sign a speaker card. We will have 3 speakers for and 3 speakers against on any particular issue. And I believe we will start off with Mr. With it. Okay.
Beginning with Resolution 2304, Perry Dodge, in support.
First of all, I just want to thank you guys for your service here in the county. I also just want to thank you for passing this resolution. I sincerely enjoyed raising my family here in St. Charles County. I'm very thankful for the county. One of the things I'm really thankful for is the library system. They were very professional, very helpful, and I watched my children flourish within the library system. I must say, I've seen an unfortunate trend recently within the leadership of the library. I've seen a library leadership feverishly preoccupied with defending what amounts to near adult exhibitionism rather than the sanctity and innocence of children. I've also seen a library CEO whose public comments and posts portray only in a negative light any outside oversight or limit to his authority, such as the Ashcroft Ordinance to keep library material developmentally appropriate, or the idea that parents should decide when their kids should get library cards? What's going on here? Last year, the president of the American Library Association announced that she was a Marxist, and then seemed surprised when that news was not universally welcomed. Last month, the state of Montana officially severed ties with the American Library Association, with Arizona, Georgia, Wyoming, and a number of other states likely to follow. Montana's reasons: the leader said, "We've made a vow to serve and protect the Constitution, and the ideology of Marxism is diametrically opposed to the Constitution." The second reason was that Marxism is intrinsically against families. Now, whether someone actually considers themselves a Marxist or not isn't so much what matters, but their actions do. And right now, the St. Charles City library leaders' actions suggest they don't so much want to partner with parents as replace them. So that's why I'm thankful for your support of this resolution, that it passed unanimously. I'm also thankful for the checks and balances of that Constitution, that you have the power to nominate the members of the board, and then you have the power to approve or disapprove them. One thing I'm wondering is, St. Charles County has blossomed under your guys' leadership. It's flourished. And if we have a population 6 or 7 times St. Charles City, couldn't the board represent that difference in population? So again, I want to thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Thank
your
you very
comments.
much.
Claire?
Lacey Burnett.
I'm a resident of Darden Prairie. I've lived in St. Charles County for more than 40 years. This seemingly minor fact has become relevant because some, including some on this council, have alleged that people who attended the library board meetings were not St. Charles County residents. I assure you we were. And I have seen friends at those meetings. And I'm here tonight because a friend of mine who is a lifelong St. Charles resident alerted me to the continued hate campaign being staged against a brave young employee of the district. My understanding is that the council is being urged to seek changes in the library district. You have no authority to do this. You oversee the St. Charles County government, not the library district, not the school districts, not the community college, the fire districts, ambulance districts, or the handicapped facilities board. If you want to have a say in the affairs of the library district, you can resign from the council and run for the library district. And I think the library board has handled this issue sufficiently. It is following state law on the issue. Its board members did not accede to the fascist purveyors of hate, bigotry, and intolerance. And for those who continue this unholy crusade against this brave young man, I quote the great American lawyer Joseph Nye Welch: "At long last, have you left no sense of decency?" Thank you.
Diane Romer.
Thank you again for passing the resolution. And I can't imagine the hundreds of issues that come across your desk. So I also just want to thank you for working hard for the well-being of individuals and families in St. Charles County. Obviously, the focus of recent discussions has been on one man dressing provocatively as a woman while working in the children's section of the library. This is of particular interest to me because for the past 26 years, I've worked as a psychotherapist with children and families, and I've spent a lot of that time with children who are very impressionable. The focus here should not be on one man's attire, but it should be on what's best for children. And I would hope that anyone would agree on that. What is best for innocent children? That is the focus. Years ago, I went to Israel, and I went to the Wailing Wall, and I had on shorts. They didn't think my attire was appropriate, so they gave me a wrap to put on. I wasn't offended. I didn't think my identity was being threatened. I just thought this is not the appropriate place to wear shorts, so I put on the wrap. The focus is getting so far on one individual and forgetting about children. There's a problem with those kind of policies. I also want to ask you to continue to protect. You guys are in a position like no other time in history. You guys are the freedom fighters. It used to be that these battles were fought on the battlefield, but now they're fought with you guys. So we need you guys to defend us and to protect families. It's such an important role. And this is just the beginning of many issues that are going to come up. And you guys were very courageous to vote yes, because I know you get pushback when you do that. I know you get pushback. So I just encourage you to continue to be ready to fight for these issues that are coming. They're coming, and I just want you to be ready. In the past, when nominations have come across your desk, I know you can rely on the recommendation of the county executive, but I know for all of us, there's things that can slip under the radar. There's hidden agendas that we don't realize are there. This makes your job harder. I know it makes all of our jobs harder. So it means that in the future, I just want to ask all of you, I want to ask the county executive to give special attention to anyone who is nominated for a public position to ensure that every person who is approved is somebody that is going to work to protect innocent children. That is the focus, is innocent children. So please keep St. Charles County. I believe it's one of the best places in the country to live. And I ask you to please keep it a place that is one of the best places to live for children and for families.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Claire?
Kristen Siebert.
Council members, I'm angry. I'm very angry. You passed that resolution without hearing from the people. That was cowardly. I am angry that all your job is to, when people bring you problems, you evaluate them. It would have taken you all of an afternoon to find out that the library has a dress code and it is enforced. This is a tempest in a teapot. The person who brought you these issues changed her stories 3 times, and that didn't factor in your vote at all. At all. And I never saw one of you, not one of you, at these library meetings where you would have heard people say repeatedly that what this is about is banning books. Actually, that's the plan. Apparently, it's a holy war, and you guys are freedom fighters. Well, I am a citizen in St. Charles County. I don't take baseless and cruel accusations of pedophilia lightly. That's disgusting, and you should be ashamed for giving a voice to that. Shame on you for that. And if you won't listen to us today, then you'll listen to us at the ballot box. That's all I've got to say to you.
Claire?
Ken Gontars.
Council members, Executive Elman. Last week, my wife and I spent the evening with Mark Cox, a local conservative talk show host, where he emceed to a standing room only crowd an event with 3 nationally recognized speakers from the Heritage Foundation, a well-known think tank. The topic of the evening, the ideological dialectic facing this nation. The very real battle for our country between conservative and progressive ideas. We see the struggle between these ideologies taking place daily within our country, in our government, at the FBI, at courts, within the media, in private industry, in our schools, and now within our library. The issues we face are numerous and are sadly tearing our nation apart. Justice versus social justice, equality for all versus equity, racism, discrimination, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, illegal immigration, First Amendment free speech issues, LGBTQ issues, transgender issues, sex reassignment surgery disputes for minors, pronouns usage, biological men competing in women's sports and in women's bathrooms, bullying, objectionable content in school libraries, parental rights regarding children, reparations, defunding the police, gun rights, election and voter rights, and the list goes on. Many of these issues are very much the topic of conversation, even here in St. Charles County. For decades, St. Charles has been considered conservative. The majority of patrons are asking that you keep it that way. Recently, we've seen what happened at Anheuser-Busch with Bud Light dropping 30% of its revenues. At the same time, Disney and Target also suffered significant financial losses. We've seen recent Supreme Court justice decisions on school board admissions and business owners' rights, and with parents speaking up at school board meetings across the nation saying, enough is enough. The resolution you passed this evening was neither radical nor sweeping. It simply was asking that political activism be withdrawn from the library system and that a politically neutral posture be maintained. Let's ensure that a pleasant, positive, enjoyable, inviting, and non-political visits be experienced by all in our libraries. And I thank you for your support.
Thank you, sir. Claire?
Amy Robertson.
Good evening. Most of our children will start school next week, and within a few weeks, we're going to begin to hear the pleas of heartbroken parents whose children are on the receiving end of bullying. Many of us are going to relate, and we're going to demand answers, trying to understand how this could be possibly happening and where these kids could possibly have learned it. Children imitate the behavior that they see modeled by the adults they love. Here in St. Charles County, the bullying is public, tolerated by public leaders, and rewarded with resolutions designed to empower the hate. What we are seeing happening in our community is no different from what happens when children decide to bully other children. They find a person who is in some way different or beneath their standard of acceptability. They make sure that person is generally unpopular and has somewhat limited support. They pick the specific thing about their target that is somehow undesirable, and they point it out to everyone, and they make a big thing about it and make it bigger and bigger and bigger so that more and more people are horrified by it. They encourage more and more people to find fault, humiliate, and belittle the target. Eventually, the target either retreats or disappears, and the bullies have won and are on to their next target. And so it continues until someone bigger comes in to make it stop. Our county libraries are the latest targets of grown-up bullying. First, someone found a librarian who looks different from what they deem acceptable. They use big, scary words to describe the librarian, ensuring that people become irate about the existence of them. Every time the story of the librarian is told, it gets bigger and bigger and is embellished more and more until there's a mob of angry villagers with the proverbial pitchforks and flames aimed directly at the librarian and library administrators. Eventually, everyone like the librarian goes into hiding or moves away, and so the bullies move on to their next target. These bullies have been relentless toward our library since mid-May, and now they have managed to recruit elected leaders to support them and give them an even greater forum in which to spew their hate. Resolution 2304 passed unanimously due to our elected leaders' fear that they will not be re-elected if they don't fall in line and do what the extremists want them to do. The resolution holds no legal water and is entirely unenforceable, but what it does do is give room to those who would find fault in others and are seeking a platform to belittle and bully without any consequences. This is just going to keep happening over and over unless those of us who know that it's wrong stand up and do something. We may not be the person under attack, but we have an obligation to stand up and push back against the hate. If we don't, our turn will eventually come to be the target of the bully, and there will be no one left to stand up for us. I'm not here to change the already decided minds of our council members. I'm here because, in the words of my brilliant friend Jenna, it becomes less about changing the council's mind and more about being a steady presence of support and visibility to let others know they're not alone. And if you can't change the council's mind, change the council.
Michelle McBride.
Michelle McBride, St. Charles County County Collector, sorry. Don't have my JD. I just wanted to make a public service announcement about 3 things that I've heard raised. There's a question about whether an election is required to raise a tax rate. And it is. There is a voter-approved maximum tax rate for every taxing authority, political subdivision listed on the tax bill. If you recently got one of the projected tax liability notices because you own real estate in the county, it shows you the voter-approved maximum levy. So if they're not at that amount, they don't have to go to the voters until they want to exceed that amount. The only way that is not different is with debt rates. And when voters go to the ballot box and vote to approve a bond issue, they will approve maybe a $3 million bond issue. And what that is saying is a political subdivision has the right to levy a debt rate to make the bond payments in the next year. But to raise an actual general revenue tax rate or a school and incidental tax rate, those are voted on by the people. The second point I wanted to mention, the state blind pension fund. On every tax bill that goes out, both personal property and real estate, there's a line that says state. That is it's 3 cents on $100 of assessed value. And we send that to the state every time we collect that. So when the state says that their fund, their money has to come to them, someone will have to make up that money, which leads into the third point about what is an unfunded mandate. I just wanted to clarify a little bit. When the General Assembly requires elected officials, counties, to do something additional, some new activity that is going to cost money, such as Rory mentioned, the collector's office will likely need to employ more people. I have 12 full-time year-round staff members. That's it. We issue over 350,000 tax bills. We do bring in some seasonal help from October to now it's more like mid-November to mid-January, for about 8 weeks only, to help with that influx of tax payments. But when there would be new mandated activity on my office, we're going to need funding to make those activities happen. So when someone asked a question about what do you mean by unfunded mandate, that's what unfunded mandate is. The General Assembly has said, you will do this, and it's going to cost you more money, but we're not going to give you the money to do it with. So the election authority could probably tell you a special election runs around $80,000, maybe more today. So those are just points of information that I thought important to share with you tonight.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate it.
David Lewis.
Greetings all, David Lewis. I'm attending here as a private citizen. I make that point because I'm also on Board of Education in Wentzville. My comments tonight have nothing to do about the Board of Education, but as a personal perspective. I've very much was interested in your discussion tonight here for SB 190. You know, that's something that I don't think anybody that's looked out and saw their future years has ever thought about. Gosh, I'm so glad I have so much money. You know, what was it this year? I think my tax bill went up about $1,000. You know, and that's even after the rollback that took place for the county, for the school district. You know, my father told me, he said, you know, you got to keep your priorities straight, and one of that is you got to look out after your own personal corporation first. And, you know, I'm in a situation like many of the senior citizens are that my earning years have wound down. And you're gonna just take us and run us out of what we can afford here. And it's not like we've got expensive homes, it's just the inflation that is out there and everything else that's going on. Through the discussion, you know, I don't know the employees, so, you know, I say it without malice, but I heard multiple comments about how that we saw both sides of the story when the attorney spoke. All I saw was just negative. The only thing I saw that was positive was that the bill was passed. I didn't see any other positives that were there, so I'm confused by the statement as a general point. You know, there's also the argument being made about that it's too broad. Well, if we had brought a bill that was too narrow, we would have heard the same argument that it's too narrow, that you don't have the flexibility. The citizens have already spoken. They've already told you what we want. We elected state representatives and state senators. They listened. I went down and spoke at one of the meetings there with the Tax Reform Committee. We told them what we wanted, and they passed the bill. We told them that we wanted to have flexibility so that a large county could do what they needed, a small county could do what they needed. They gave us that. Is it perfect? Well, no, but what is? But your responsibility now is not to debate whether or not we should do it. But as one council member said, we're leaders. We need to lead. We need to show what it's like to take care of our citizens. When's the last time that there's something significant that took place that helped the senior citizens? Every 3 years we get something from the school. Every 2 years we get something from the ambulance district. You know, it's on and on with the tax increases. When is there something for the senior citizens? And this is our turn. And my expectation is that you take the measures and take care of the senior citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Walter Trost.
Okay, I built my home 24 years ago. Never complained, always voted for all education. I love education. Okay, but now here comes this hit. I live on a cul-de-sac where there's 7 houses. Okay, I want someone to answer me a question. We all got our taxes raised 19%. This gentleman over here, Mr. Negativity, that's what I called him. Anybody that puts up on the board that we might have a small turnout in election. When is that ever brought up in any election? That comment, I just couldn't stand it. We've taken $1,000 per 7 houses. That's $7,000. Where is that money going to? You talk about, oh, we're going to lose money in the future. You're going to gain money. Me, if you pass this, to freeze it, I'm going to stay the same. I'm going to stay the same. I'm going to pay my taxes. I'm going to be left alone. Okay? So you ain't losing nothing with me. Now, my other 6 neighbors, you're gaining money. You're gaining $1,000 a person every year for X amount of years. Okay? I just want to know where they keep. Every time I read the paper from, not you specifically, but I read, we're going to lose money if this passes. I keep seeing it. McGraw-Millhaven talks about it. We're going to lose money. Where are you going to lose money? There's only 7 houses on this block, and you're going to make money. You're going to make it every year for year after year after year. And I hear this gentleman say, oh, it's going to cost us. We got to hire people. You're going to have the money. You're going to have the money. You're going to have it every year, year after year after year. As far as my house going up in property values, I could care less about that. Care less. My wife and I are going to die in that home. Now, when we die, you can come in and assess the property. You can raise it to whatever you want and make the money. But it's getting silly out there. Us people that are retired, and let me tell you something. This gentleman said, I had 30 years in government service. Yes, I get Social Security. You know how I did it? I have 5 kids. I sent them to private schools. I worked 3 jobs. I sold suits at Famous Bar at night to get my Social Security. So now I get penalized from the government because I get Social Security. My government pension reflects that. You've heard of what that is. Most people don't, but what it is. I get penalized that way. Now I come from St. Charles and you want to penalize me again. It's bad. It's really rotten to what you're doing. You got a question?
Yeah,
Tim?
how are we penalizing you?
Do what?
How are we penalizing you?
Well, it's a system where if you work for the government and you don't pay any Social Security, but you do pay Social Security because you're working other jobs, then they take what your pension is, They only let you have 55% of what you're entitled to.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your comments.
Is that good?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
James Trost.
You have passed, okay.
Okay, Dennis Ganch. Gana.
Gans.
I'm here. Joe, thanks for inviting me. My name's Dennis Ganal. I'm the founder and managing director for Mo Tax Relief Now. We started in 2007. We've got a couple thousand members, many hundreds in St. Charles County. If my comments probably would have taken less time than the debate tonight, but I'm going to jump right to the conclusion. And this was the recommendation I was going to make. My recommendation is to be a leader. Right? Embrace SB 190 and put its passage into motion as soon as possible. Well, you've agreed to that, right? So I think that's wonderful. I think this is a big step forward for St. Charles County tonight. You're in the lead of the pack. Next, I was going to say was set up a committee to draft an ordinance language and to put it to a vote by the commission so that you understand you can tailor-make this to St. Charles County. You don't have to treat it like Christian County does or another county. I don't agree with well, I'm going to finish. So this will quiet all the noise from all the taxing authorities. Once St. Charles County says, we're going to do this, then all the taxing authorities, they have to kind of go away because now they understand St. Charles County does what Missourians want, and that is to put their seniors and their families first. And that's an important step for St. Charles County. It's an important step for Missouri. It's what we're about. A year ago when we started working on senior tax relief, I had no idea we were going to be where we are today. We've got 20 counties in Missouri considering it. Everybody told me it was going to take us 4 years to pass it. We got it in 1 year. And all 11 of your state representatives, all of your senators voted for it. Does any legislator know what's in any bill? I can tell you, I've been down to Jefferson City more times this year than I've ever been. Our volunteers probably put out tens of thousands of emails and phone calls into the legislators. And I can tell you they don't. I mean, even Luke Meyer up there, I'm not even sure I know which bill he was even talking about. I mean, because there was probably 50 different bills up there that were trying to address senior tax relief. So, at any rate, this will settle and satisfy the seniors in St. Charles County. I would offer, we're working with Camden County and several other counties on language for this bill. I'm not going to sit and argue about, unfunded tax mandates if a county actually accepts it. I'm not going to start talking about, whether it was the eligibility of the age or anything like that. As long as we're moving forward in this positive direction, and we don't have to come in here and put a petition together, collect 11,000 signatures, and make the language our language, as opposed to your language, we're happy. And I'm sure all the members on Mo Tax Relief Now are happy. So I think it's a great night. Congratulations to all of you. It's a big win. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mike Birding.
Good evening. My name's Mike Birding. I'm with Sterling Engineering, and we're here tonight on behalf of DHKS requesting that the bill number 5200 and 5203 be untabled tonight and allowed to go forward.
Okay.
And I'll be here to answer any questions if they come up.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. We will do that. Thank you.
Greg Modlish.
Man, a lot of heavy stuff tonight. I don't have anything like that. I'm just here to talk about something that the Republican Central Committee is doing in September. September 15th, we're holding a Freedom Fest out in Defiance. Sugar Creek Winery, we're gonna have catered barbecue. You'll get a couple of drink tickets for your donation. We're gonna raffle off an AR, the scary gun. We're gonna raffle off a flamethrower. In honor of Jared Schmitz, our fallen Marine from Wentzville, we're gonna raffle off a $200 bottle of bourbon in his honor. It's got his likeness and his story on it. So We're going to have live music. We're going to have a great time. 6:30 to 9:30. Just a bunch of rabid patriots out there. Come on out and have some fun. It's a fundraiser. We support local candidates for school boards and county council races and what have you. So we invite you all to come out and hang out with us. All right?
Jarrett Pillsbury.
I'll be there. You'll know me.
What'd I do?
It'll pop up.
Oh, well.
There you go.
Cool. We'll talk about them in a minute. Hey, long-time listener, first-time caller. I wanted to spend a few minutes tonight talking about focus and what prompts us to focus on something in the first place. Often we focus on things that are problems for our community. We learn about something because members of the community communicated concern, and then what? We respond in knee-jerk fashion without thinking and without any support for our actions, without any data or evidence, and all because someone complained the loudest? Of course not. No, we take time to gather information, to assess calmly, rationally, and we engage our community members. That's how it should be to make an important and informed decision. But ladies and gentlemen, that is not the approach we witnessed from this county council tonight. No, tonight we saw a rash action and attacks on a man's First Amendment rights, all because of another person's rash actions, based solely on her response to a person's appearance. The person didn't look like this man, or this woman, or this youth pastor, or this sports coach, or this law enforcement officer. Or this man, Fabian Marta, ex-boyfriend and treasurer to Jessica Clark, school board director in Rockwood, who was arrested on charges of child kidnapping. The other 5 were arrested, charged, or pleaded guilty to crimes including sex assault, child rape, and yes, even child sex trafficking. If only it were individuals to concern ourselves with. Sadly, we have examples of whole organizations like the former Agape boarding school and other unlicensed schools where abuses and harms go unchecked by our elected officials. I have heard nothing from this loud voice or her supporters about any of these kinds of actual problems. Only focus on someone who has done no harm but was simply different. And now the county council has been brought along for the ride. I condemn the actions of this council, and it's focusing on the wrong thing when there are actual things, real problems, real threats to our community that exist. And here we are wasting time giving in to demands of someone heavy on volume but light on substance. I'll send you subsequent information in email. I would ask you to consider whether you've exercised good judgment tonight, respective of this policy, and perhaps a bit of self-reflection is in order. One of you has shown yourself receptive to the messaging of a demonstrated hate group. One of you has shown support for some community members pushing anti-Semitic conspiracy theories that call for extrajudicial killings. One of you has asked why we need to cater to people who have extreme opinions. I would argue with supporting evidence, of course, that the person responsible for the original complaint has far more extreme opinions and is the one who has targeted individuals and caused harm. Extreme opinions and extreme actions. And here you are, catering to them. Did you consider that? You've also suggested that you believe the library turnout, library workers and library administrators, that the support for them is not from St. Charles County and shouldn't be considered. I'd like to understand how you made that determination. Is it based on evidence or a rash statement? For those of you who took action tonight, I'd caution you to consider the source. My point in all of this is to be careful who and what you believe and be prepared for scrutiny from the podium and the polls when your policy decisions are in response to accusations, shifting stories, and defamation. Thank you.
Arnie Dienoff.
Mr. Dienoff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of council. My name is Arnie C. A.C. Dienoff, County Public Advocate. And to the gentleman who said that he got an 18% tax increase or assessment value increase, most residents of St. Charles County this cycle received a 24 to 30% increase. And that's why there were close to 1,000 appeals to the Board of Equalization. Now, to the county executive, Steve Ellman, why not appoint county residents who are directors of departments to manage and management positions who are actual residents of our county and care about our county? I'm confused that our citizens are not good enough for you to appoint to county positions at management levels. Now, the appointment of Kevin Colleen, his reporting on KMWX says he is proud to resign in Webster Groves. So he resides in Webster Groves 63119. And so our county home rule charter says the appointment of all department heads by the county executive comes with the confirmation by the county council. And residency, as many department heads of our county are required per our county charter approved by our voters. Now, Mary Engler, the current communications director, is a resident of Eastern St. Charles County, last that I knew. Hopefully she's still a resident, so I saw her husband at a voting precinct poll, so I would imagine that they're county residents. Right to your due right is the acting county councilor, Rory O'Sullivan, who resides in South St. Louis City, and you pay him $175,000, supporting the economy of St. Louis City, and now you're supporting the economy of Webster Groves. Why does the county executive continue to boost the economy of St. Louis City and St. Louis County by sending our taxpayer dollars to other counties rather than invest in our residents right here in St. Charles County? Why not hire residents of St. Charles County who have a stake and vested interest in our county and in their heart? We want county directors and employees to live in our county and be part of our neighborhoods and part of the solution of making St. Charles County great. Now, I'm making a public information request under Chapter 610 for Mr. Colleen's public salary. Are you paying him, Mr. Elman, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, or over $100,000? It should be a matter of public record. I believe in the fact that St. Charles County, City County Public Library District trustees who are appointed by Mr. Elman and by the mayor of the city of St. Charles need those nine trustees need to be elected countywide, and we need a state law change to have accountability. On Bill 5213, what is the cost of residents of reestablishing positions in the Department of Corrections and the Patrol Bureau and transferring funds to the Division of Emergency Management? And finally, O'Fallon spent $2.5 million, St. Charles $2.5 million
Thank you,
for
sir.
20-lane fire range, which is a duplication of services that the county already offers.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Claire?
That's the final speaker.
Is that it?
Final speaker.
Okay, thank you. All right, we next will have an oral report from the county executive. We, on the subject of the library, we've had 3 for, 3 against is what we got. So it's not library related? Okay, all right, it's a non-agenda item. Claire, is that correct?
You'll have to.
Go ahead,
They're
Stephen,
called
and
it,
we'll
speaker.
sort it out here in a second, ma'am, okay?
Is Scott Shipman still here?
No, he left.
He left. I was going to thank him for his years of service. As you know, he stepped down a week or so ago and did a super job. I know a former senator, who's actually on a state tax commission. I see him once a year in Jeff City, and the first thing he always says is, "Boy, your assessor is one of the best in the entire state." And wanted to make sure everybody understood we're losing a really top-notch person there. I know Mary Anger is still here.
Yes, Mary.
Mary, stand up. Mary, did we get the, is it up there?
The countdown.
There's the countdown, folks. 9 days, 20 hours, 10 minutes, and 44 seconds. You're not really that anxious to leave, are you? I tell you, we've had several directors of communication, but you were definitely here through one of the most difficult times that I've ever experienced. I think anybody that's been involved in county government, those 2 or 3 years where we had to deal with all the COVID issues, and I don't know how many interviews you set up with TV people from St. Louis coming out and asking me why we didn't have a mask mandate and why we weren't closing our businesses. But you did a super job. You helped me get through those things. Got to know each other better as time went on, and you know what they say, that which we survive makes us stronger. And boy, we learned a lot those 2 or 3 years. I know I did. Learned some lessons I hope can use the rest of my career. And I congratulate you for not needing to use them for the rest of yours. So have a great retirement. You've built a super department and really have improved it at every level. I know Kevin is looking forward to taking your place, and he'll be joining us on the 21st. Kevin, welcome, but we'll be seeing plenty of you as we go down the road here. And Mary, I hope we see you coming back to say hi, because we kind of got used to you and we kind of like you. Thank you.
Back to public comment. Catherine Manel.
Catherine, sorry about that, man. We just, a lot of cards, we mix it in there.
Thank you for your time. Sorry?
Turn that, or does it not work? No.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Sorry. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to address you. I believe it's a fair statement to say that restoring voter confidence in elections is of the highest priority as we're beginning the 2024 election cycle. I believe that it's also fair to say that it's the responsibility of the St. Charles County officials and the County Election Authority to do what's needed to help the voters build that confidence. And I believe transparency and the truth are what the voters need, and yet that's exactly what we're being denied. On May 26, 2023, nearly 3 months ago, I sent a sunshine request for documents and records to the St. Charles County Election Authority, which I've never received a response to. I followed up with a second attempt to request those records on July 22, 2023, which I've also not received a response to. This past weekend, I submitted a sunshine law complaint to the Missouri Attorney General to inform him of Director Barr's noncompliance with RSMO 610.023 and to enlist help in obtaining the items I requested and that I'm legally entitled to. I'm bringing this to your attention because I'm aware that my experience is consistent with Councilman Brazil, who has experienced that he experienced when he recently requested information from Mr. Barr. It's come to my attention that each of the 11 items listed and not responded to in my request is a separate violation of the law with a penalty of $1,000 each, for a total to the county of $11,000. So this evening, I'm asking for your assistance and for you to exercise your authority to hold Mr. Barr accountable for his choice to continuously ignore and violate Missouri law, for his behavior that has failed to answer voters' concerns and promote a respectful dialogue about elections, and for his lack of due diligence as the county election authority. And before you allocate 1 more cent of county funds to the maintenance or purchase of election systems, it is worth an hour of your time to look through the evidence on nomofraud.com showing that election voting systems are not legally certified for use in elections because there are no legally accredited labs to issue that certification. It is worth an hour of your time to look through the evidence on open.inc/Conic showing the intricate relationship specifically between St. Charles County and a Chinese election software company, including an image of the St. Charles County seal desecrated with Chinese characters printed across the seal and prominently published on the website of said software company, which is on the screen. It is worth an hour of your time to look at the analysis of the evidence showing the internet service providers accused of participating in the infiltration of your St. Charles County election systems during the 2020 election. Don't you believe it's worth a couple hours of your time to demonstrate to voters your commitment to transparency and the truth? I have copies for you that have the URLs for you to do research.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, having no more speakers, thank you, ma'am. We will move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion, or is there any items to be removed from the consent agenda?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as listed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, consent agenda has passed. Okay, next up is bills for final passage. I'll just wait just a second here and allow folks to clear. Okay, first bill for final passage is Bill number 5212, please.
Bill number 5212, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Lake St. Louis for collection of ad valorem real estate tax, ad valorem personal property tax, sewer line repair service fees, and water line repair service fees.
Questions or comments on Bill number 5212? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bill number 5212, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Lake St. Louis for the collection of ad valorem real estate tax, ad valorem personal property tax, sewer line repair service fees, and water line repair service fees. Councilman Elam?
Yes.
Councilman Hollander?
Yes.
Councilman Hammond?
Yes.
Councilman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman Baker?
Yes.
Councilman Swanson?
Yes.
Councilman Brazel?
Yes.
Okay, Bill number 5212 passes. The next bill for final passage is Bill number 5213.
Bill number 5213, an ordinance amending the 2023 budget is adopted by ordinance 22-087 as amended for the reestablishment of 3 kitchen worker positions in the Department of Corrections and further within the St. Charles County Police Department for a reclassification of 4 police officer positions in the Patrol Bureau to the existing position of police sergeant, and an amendment to the budget of the Patrol Bureau and realignment of the Division of Emergency Management to the Bureau of the Chief and transferring appropriations between line items in the general fund budget of the Department of Police related to the Division of Emergency Management.
Questions or comments on 5213? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bill number 5213, an ordinance amending the 2023 budget is adopted by ordinance 22-087 as amended for the reestablishment of 3 kitchen worker positions in the Department of Corrections and further within the St. Charles County Police Department for a reclassification of 4 police officer positions in the Patrol Bureau to the existing position of police sergeant, and an amendment to the budget of the Patrol Bureau and realignment of the Division of Emergency Management to the Bureau of the Chief and transferring appropriations between line items in the general fund budget of the Department of Police related to the Division of Emergency Management. Councilman Hollander?
Yes.
Councilman Hammond?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman Baker?
Yes.
Councilman Swanson?
Yes.
Councilman Brazel?
Yes.
Councilman Elam?
Yes.
Okay. That concludes bills for final passage. We will begin bills for introduction with Bill number 5214.
Bill number 5214, requested by Amanda Brower, sponsored by Terry Hollander. An ordinance authorizing execution of an intergovernmental agreement relating to the management of fiber optic installation and utilization between St. Charles County and the city of Wentzville.
Any questions or comments on Bill 5214?
I do.
Yes.
So I work in this industry, so I'm going to abstain from taking any position on this, just to make sure there's no conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, moving on to Bill number 5215, please.
Bill number 5215, requested by Dr. Mary Case, sponsored by Terry Hollander. An ordinance authorizing the county executive or his designee to execute amendment number 1 to Program Services Contract KQ230052432 with the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services for violent death and overdose death surveillance reimbursement.
Okay, questions or comments on 5215? Seeing none, we move on to Bill number 5216.
Bill number 5216, requested by Sarah Evers, sponsored by Terry Hollander. An ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an intergovernmental field practicum placement agreement with the curators of the University of Missouri for the University of Missouri-Columbia Masters of Public Health program.
Questions or comments on 5216? Seeing none, we move on to Bill number 5217.
Bill number 5217, requested by Jeff Smith, sponsored by Terry Hollander, an ordinance authorizing execution of an agreement relating to public safety, answering point geographic information system boundaries, and related documents.
Questions or comments on Bill number 5216? 17, I'm sorry. Seeing none, move on to Bill number 5218.
Bill number 5218, requested by Ryan Graham, sponsored by Terry Hollander. An ordinance authorizing amendment number 1 of Ordinance 22-036, Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission State Block Grant Agreement, Airport Improvement Program Grant, Project 21-111A-2, CFDA 20.106, to design taxi lane pavements at St. Charles County Regional Airport Smart Field.
Questions, comments on 5218? Seeing none, we move on to tabled bills. Are there any bills to be removed from the table?
Make a motion to remove bill number 5200 from the table.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are now, we'll discuss bill number 5200, which is a CUP. Read the title. Oh, she's got to read the title, I'm sorry, then we'll go through. Okay.
Bill number 5200, requested by Mike Hurlbert, sponsored by Joe Braslett, an ordinance granting conditional use permit CUP 23-08 for a storage yard for recreational vehicles, boats, trailers, and trucks to DHKS Investments LLC property owners.
Okay, 1 second here, Joe. Just a reminder to the council that since this is a CUP and there must be a remonstrance, this will require 5 votes to pass. The other bill that will be taken off the table will only require 4 votes to pass. Okay? Go ahead, Joe.
Sir, engineer, I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Mike.
Mike, at the last meeting, I'd asked you, do you have a plot plan of this? Can you show me the
It should come up. There you go.
Mike, on the last meeting, there was a request that you put a berm. You have a partial berm on the left, but you have it, no berm in the middle. And all the other storage lots we had come in our area with Keevan and so forth, he put a nice berm in with multiple trees. And I asked you if you would do that, and you said you would, but I don't see it on there. Well, we didn't revise the plan, but the intent, and we committed to adding the berm, and it was my understanding we would do that as part of a plan review, process for, be a condition of the approval. Is that, is Robert or Michael? Is that okay? Or shouldn't it be part of the plot plan?
You can make it part of the conditions, but it would be part of the plot plan, part of the survey, the site plan review when that comes in.
Do we make it as an amendment, or is it just understood with this conversation?
Understood through this conversation, be part of the minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Baker.
Yeah, I'm going to be abstaining on this vote, just for the reasons why I explained to you, but I work for Elite Development, which is a company owned jointly by Barra and McBride Homes. Sterling, the company that Mr. Boarding works for, is owned by Barra, so I will be abstaining.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this, Mr. Swanson?
Since this has been tabled, what changes have been made?
We have not made any changes other than agreeing to the berm and landscaping along the highway.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, any other comments? Okay, please call the roll, and again, reminder that we would need 5 votes for passage on this particular bill.
Bill number 5200, an ordinance granting conditional use permit CUP 23-08 for a storage yard for recreational vehicles, boats, trailers, and trucks to DHKS Investments LLC property owners. Councilman Hollander?
No.
Councilman Hammond?
No.
Councilwoman Schneider?
No.
Councilman Baker?
Abstain.
Councilman Swanson?
No.
Councilman Brazel?
No.
Councilman Elam?
No.
Okay. The bill number 5200, the CUP fails. Now I need a motion to bring off to the table the rezoning of this particular, which is bill number 5203.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to remove bill number 5203 from the table.
Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Hammond. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are now discussing bill number 5203, and will you please read the title?
Bill number 5203, an ordinance amending the zoning district map of the County of St. Charles, Missouri by rezoning land from A Agricultural District to C2 General Commercial District per application RZ 23-07.
Okay. Questions or comments on bill 5203?
Well, I'm just going to abstain again on the same bill, so thank you, for the same reason.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll on bill number 5203.
Bill number 5203, an ordinance amending the zoning district map of the County of St. Charles, Missouri by rezoning land from A Agricultural District to C2 General Commercial District per application RZ 23-07. Councilman Hammond?
No.
Councilwoman Schneider?
No.
Councilman Baker?
Abstain.
Councilman Swanson?
No.
Councilman Brazel?
No.
Councilman Elam?
No.
Councilman Hollander?
No. Bill number 5203 fails. We now move on to announcements and miscellaneous. Does anyone have any particular announcements or miscellaneous? All right.
I would make an announcement and welcome Kevin Colleen.
Yes.
Kevin and I first worked together in 1989 at KXOK Radio, back when they made a run at KMOX, and Kevin upgraded from KXOK to KMOX, and he's always done a really great job covering stories. I know KMOX is going to miss someone writing the Christmas story, and who's going to come up with that, plus a whole other story. So I look forward to the whole other story of St. Charles County being told, so welcome aboard.
Well, welcome, Kevin. Okay. All right. Yes, Joe.
Just to let everybody know, there's a cyber election summit this week in Springfield. It's from Wednesday to Thursday. It's a national conference. I'll be attending with a lot of other people from St. Charles County. They're talking about the one topic is Missouri and St. Charles County on some of the things that happened that we've made complaints on, and Osage County. So those will be topics on a national conference. It's going to be extremely interesting. And so there'll be over 1,000 people at this conference, and it starts in Springfield on Wednesday morning until Thursday night. So anyway.
Thank you, Joe. Anything else? Okay, do I have a motion
to adjourn?
Do I have a second? Second. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, folks.